Hey, Stoic warriors, there's a fake version of you, and it's slowly killing your real life. It smiles when it should speak up, stays quiet when it should act, and bends just enough to be accepted while losing everything that makes you powerful. It looks safe, but it's weak. And every day you keep it alive, it drains your confidence, your clarity, your identity. This isn't just who you are, it's who you've been pretending to be. And the danger? If you don't kill it, it will bury the real you completely. No growth, no respect, no direction, just a life built on acting. There comes a moment where you stop protecting that version and start eliminating it without hesitation. That's where your real life finally begins. And the painful part is, you know it. Deep down, somewhere underneath all the noise, the obligations, the people-pleasing, you already know this isn't fully you. You've felt it. That quiet ache when you go along with something you hate. That hollow feeling after a conversation where you said everything except what you actually meant. That exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix. Because it's not your body that's tired. It's your soul carrying a version of you that was never supposed to last this long. You built this fake self for a reason. Maybe you needed to survive a home where being real got you punished. Maybe you needed to fit into a world that had no space for who you actually were. Maybe you got hurt so deeply, so early, that you decided, unconsciously, that the real you was too much, too intense, too different, too vulnerable. So you sculpted something more acceptable, something that wouldn't get rejected, something safe. But safe became a prison. Epictetus, a man who was literally born a slave and still mastered his own mind, said something that should hit every single one of us like cold water to the face. He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has. But here's what people miss in that. You cannot rejoice in what you have if you've buried it under a performance. You cannot access your real strength, your real peace, your real power while you're playing a character that was designed to please everyone except yourself. This isn't about self-help language. This isn't about a journey. This is about the raw, uncomfortable, necessary act of looking at the version of yourself you've been protecting and choosing to let it die. Not tomorrow. Not when life gets easier. Right now. Because the longer it breathes, the weaker your real self gets. And one day you'll wake up and realize you don't even remember who you were before you started performing. That moment is the most terrifying thing a human being can face. Not death, not failure, but complete and total loss of self while you're still alive, still breathing, still showing up to a life that was never really yours. So this is your warning and your invitation. The fake self doesn't go quietly. It fights, it justifies, it tells you that you need it to survive, but you don't need it anymore. You never did. Drop this in the comments. I am done pretending. Now let's begin. Point number 1. You were conditioned to shrink, and you called it maturity. Nobody wakes up one day and decides to become fake. It doesn't happen like that. It happens in small moments. The first time you got excited about something and someone laughed. The first time you spoke your truth and the room went cold. The first time you showed your real emotion and got told you were too sensitive. So you adjusted. You dialed it down. You learned the rules of every room you walked into. What's acceptable, what's too much, what version of you they can tolerate. And you became that. Every single time. And somewhere along the way, you stopped calling it shrinking. You started calling it maturity. You called it being the bigger person. You called it keeping the peace. But let's be honest about what actually happened. You got trained. Trained to make yourself smaller so other people stayed comfortable. Trained to swallow your instincts so the environment stayed calm. trained to prioritize acceptance over authenticity so deeply that now, years later, you don't even notice when you're doing it anymore. That's not maturity. That's conditioning. And there's a massive difference. Maturity is knowing when to speak and when to stay silent based on wisdom. Conditioning is staying silent every time because your nervous system learned that speaking up comes with consequences. One comes from strength, the other comes from fear. And you've been living in that fear so long, it started feeling like personality. The Stoics called this prasos, self-attention, the daily practice of watching yourself, not performing for others, but actually observing your own patterns with brutal honesty. Marcus Aurelius didn't build his discipline by being hard on the world. He built it by being relentlessly honest with himself, every single day. And what he found, what you'll find too, is that most of the limitations you live inside aren't real. They're inherited. They were handed to you by people who were also shrinking, also conditioned, also afraid. You absorbed their ceiling and made it your own. The moment you see that, really see it, something shifts permanently. Because you stop blaming yourself for being small and start recognizing the architecture of how that smallness was built. And once you understand how something was built, you have the power to tear it down. Your silence was never peace. It was surrender dressed in patience. And it ends now. Point number 2. The people who needed you. Fake are not your people. Here's something nobody tells you when you're busy twisting yourself into shapes to be accepted. The people who only love the performance were never really loving you. They were loving your compliance, your availability, your ability to never challenge them, never threaten them, never outgrow them. And the moment you start showing up as your actual self, with real opinions, real boundaries, real ambition, watch how fast the energy shifts. Watch who gets uncomfortable. Watch who suddenly calls you different or difficult or too much. That discomfort you feel from them, that's not rejection. That's information. Because real people, people who are built for your real life, don't need you to be smaller to feel comfortable around you. They don't need you to dim your intensity so they can relax. They don't flinch when you speak your truth. They don't disappear when you stop performing. They actually show up more. They lean in. Because authenticity doesn't repel the right people. It filters out the wrong ones. And that filter is the most necessary and painful process you will ever go through. The hard part is that some of those wrong people are people you love. Family members who preferred the version of you that never pushed back. Friends who liked you better when you were lost because it made them feel less behind. Partners who needed your insecurity to feel secure. And this is where it gets genuinely difficult because you have to grieve the dynamic while still loving the person. You have to accept that someone can love you and still not be capable of handling the real you. That's not a villain story. That's just a painful truth. Seneca wrote, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Not comfortable, not convenient, better." There's a version of your social life right now that is actively keeping you locked inside the fake self. Because the fake self is what that environment was built around. And every time you try to grow, that environment quietly pulls you back to who you were, because who you were made everyone else feels safe. You were never too much. You were just too real for the wrong room. Stop shrinking your fire to fit spaces that were never built to hold it. Point number 3. Your comfort zone isn't protecting you. It's slowly erasing you. There's a version of comfort that feels like safety, but functions like a slow erasure. You don't notice it happening because it never hurts enough to alarm you. It just quietly removes things. Your hunger, your edge, your willingness to risk something real for something meaningful. And day by day, routine by routine, you wake up in a life that looks completely fine from the outside. Stable job, familiar faces, predictable days, and feel absolutely nothing on the inside. Not pain, not joy, just this flat, grey, suffocating numbness that you've started accepting as normal. That numbness is not peace. That is what dying feels like when it happens slowly. The fake self loves comfort. It was literally built for comfort. It was constructed to avoid friction, avoid rejection, avoid the terrifying vulnerability of actually trying something that matters to you and potentially failing publicly. So it keeps you in the same conversations, the same patterns, the same version of Tuesday you've been living for 3 years. It tells you to wait. Wait until you're ready. Wait until the timing is right. Wait until you have more information, more money, more courage. And while you wait, your real self sits buried underneath all that waiting, getting weaker, getting quieter, getting closer to permanent silence. The Stoics had a concept that cut straight through this: memento mori. Remember that you will die. Not as a dark thought, but as a clarifying one. Marcus Aurelius used it not to create fear, but to create urgency. Because when you truly absorb the reality that your time is not infinite, that the years you're spending in comfortable numbness are years you cannot reclaim, comfort stops feeling like safety and starts feeling like what it actually is: theft. Your comfort zone is stealing your life in installments so small you never notice the withdrawal. Every time you chose the familiar over the necessary, you sent your real self a message that it isn't worth the risk. And your real self heard every single one of those messages. That's where the self-doubt lives. That's where the quiet voice that says, "Maybe I'm not capable," was born. Not from failure, but from never letting yourself find out. You were not built for a comfortable erasure. You were built for something that demands everything you actually are. Point number 4. You've been waiting for permission that was never coming. Somewhere inside you, there is something you've been sitting on, a decision you haven't made, a move you haven't taken, a conversation you've been rehearsing in your head for months but never had. And if you're honest, brutally, uncomfortably honest, the reason you haven't moved isn't because you lack the ability. It's because you've been waiting for someone to tell you that you're ready, waiting for the people around you to validate the direction you already know you need to go, waiting for some external signal that it's finally okay to become who you actually are. And that permission is never coming. It was never going to come. Because the people you're waiting on are still waiting on someone else themselves. This is one of the deepest psychological traps the fake self sets. It outsources your authority. It hands the keys of your own life to people who were never qualified to hold them. Parents who projected their fears onto your potential. Peers who measured your worth against their insecurities. Systems that rewarded your obedience and punished your originality. And after years of that conditioning, you stopped trusting your own instincts. Not because your instincts were wrong, but because every time you followed them, someone made you feel like they were. So you learned to ask, to check, to wait for consensus before you moved. And that habit, that deeply embedded survival-born habit of seeking permission, is now the single biggest wall between you and the life that's actually yours. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And mastery of yourself begins the moment you stop requiring the world's approval to exist fully. Not arrogantly, not recklessly, but with the quiet, unshakable certainty of someone who finally stopped outsourcing their own judgment to people who never had to live with the consequences of it. Your instincts have been right more times than you've given them credit for. That pull you feel towards something greater, that restlessness that won't let you fully settle, that is not confusion. That is your real self pushing against the ceiling the fake self built. That is direction. That is clarity, trying to break through years of second guessing. Stop asking, stop waiting, stop needing the nod. You already have everything required to move. You just keep pretending you don't. Point number 5. The real you was never lost. It was suppressed, and it's furious. People talk about finding themselves, like the real self is somewhere out there, like it wandered off and needs to be searched for, like it's hiding in a new city, a new relationship, a new morning routine. But that's not what happened to you. You didn't lose yourself. You buried yourself. Deliberately, systematically, layer by layer, year by year, under approval and fear, and the exhausting performance of being whoever the moment required. And the real you didn't disappear. It went underground. And it's been down there this whole time, watching, waiting, accumulating pressure like a fault line that hasn't broken yet. That's where your rage comes from when you finally get alone and quiet. That's where the sudden grief hits you out of nowhere on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. That's the source of that overwhelming feeling you can't name. That desperate, aching sense that your life should feel different than this. That isn't depression. That isn't ingratitude. That is your real self screaming from underneath everything you piled on top of it. It is furious that you've kept it down this long. It is done being patient with your excuses. And here's what's critical to understand about that fury. It's not destructive. It's directional. That intensity you feel when you imagine actually living without the mask, actually speaking without filtering, actually moving toward what genuinely sets you alive. That isn't recklessness. That is power that has been stored under pressure for years, finally finding a direction. The Stoics understood this through the concept of hegemonikon, the ruling faculty, the commanding center of the self. They believed that when a man is fully aligned with his true nature, nothing external can genuinely break him. Not failure, not judgment, not loss. Because he is operating from his actual core rather than a constructed surface. The moment you stop suppressing that real self and start directing its energy, everything changes. Not gradually, suddenly. The way a room changes when someone walks in who is completely, unapologetically themselves. There's a gravity to it, a magnetism. People feel it before you say a word. Opportunities respond to it. Your own mind stops fighting itself. Because you're no longer dividing your energy between maintaining the performance and secretly resenting it. You stop being exhausted by your own existence. That version of you, raw, real, unfiltered, unafraid, was never the problem. It was always the answer. Every relationship that drained you, every opportunity you missed, every moment you felt invisible, all of it traces back to one single root. You were showing up as the wrong person, not anymore. The suppression ends here. The real you surfaces now, and it doesn't apologize for the space it takes up. The funeral is over. Now you live. You've just walked through 5 of the deepest truths about the fake self, how it was built, who it served, what it cost you, and why it has to die. And if any of this hit somewhere real, somewhere that made your chest tight, or your eyes sting, or your jaw clench, that's not coincidence. That's recognition. That's your real self, finally hearing someone say out loud what it's been trying to tell you for years. This is the part where most people nod along. Feel something powerful for a few minutes, and then go straight back to the performance. Back to the shrinking, back to the waiting, back to the comfort of the familiar prison. And if that's what you choose, if you close this video and go right back to protecting the fake version, nobody will know. Life will continue, the days will pass, but you will know. And that quiet knowing will get heavier with every year you carry it. Or you choose differently today. Not perfectly, not all at once, but differently. You catch yourself shrinking and you stand back up. You feel the urge to perform, and you choose honesty instead. You wait for permission, and then you move without it. Small moments, repeated daily. That is how the fake self actually dies. Not in one dramatic confrontation, but in 1,000 small acts of choosing real over comfortable. Marcus Aurelius spent years writing to himself, not for the world, but to hold himself accountable to his own standard. That discipline, that relentless return to who he actually was, that is the work. The fake self had its time. That time is finished. You are not who fear made you. You are not who approval shaped you. You are not the performance. You are what was underneath it all along. Now go be that, completely, without apology. Type this in the comments. Born again real.